Hey guys, welcome back. This is the story of what if Deku was raised by Nezu. Copyright disclaimer, I do not own this fanfiction in any way possible. Information about the author and this fanfic is in the description. Now without further ado, let's start the story. Izuku makes a new friend. Endeavor makes the worst enemy. Nedzu enjoyed letting Izuku live a normal life. He went to a normal school because Nedzu wanted him to live as normal as he could with a pro hero as his secret father. Hopefully, he finds some friends that will be there for him in the long run. When he grew older, Nedzu hoped that Izuku will live his life as freely as he can because Nedzu wanted him to be uncontrolled. Maybe with a little bit of instruction and advice, but never with an abusive hand pushing him into things. Izuku was 3 years old now and Nedzu was feeling that the time was passing too quickly. It felt like a week ago that Izuku turned 1. Nedzu sipped his mint tea with his little mint-flavored cookies as he watched Izuku interact with Tenya during the school day at UA. Tenya was allowed to have a playdate with his friend while their big brother was busy with his new hero work. Yes, all his honorary uncles and aunt were now working as pro heroes. Under the names Midnight, Ingenium, Present Mike and Eraserhead, they patrol the streets and protect the innocent from danger. Nedzu couldn't be more proud at what they have become, although he does remember that they graduated with a heavy heart by having to say goodbye to their honorary nephew. They missed getting to see him every day, but they do visit when they don't have any patrol clogging up their schedule. Aizawa visited the most during the day since he works as an underground hero during the night. Anyway, enough of talking about the past because Endeavor was visiting with Nedzu to talk about when he might be able to enroll his children in UA. Nedzu allowed him to bring his youngest child, Shuto, so that Izuku might have another friend to lay with while his father talked to another father. He hoped that Endeavor had fixed his whole problem with All Might and was actually behaving like a good father to his children. But his hope will be quickly diminished very soon. Tenya and Izuku were coloring in their coloring books when a child of split white and red hair walked in shyly. "Behave," a harsh voice said from the deck of the door before shutting it loudly. The young boy flinched before continuing to a place a few feet away from the two. Izuku tilted his head and looked at Tenya. "I think he is shy." "It looks like he is," Tenya replied. "What do we do?" "I'm going to invite him over to play with us," Izuku said to his friend before they both nodded at each other. The new boy looked over when Izuku walked to him. "What do you want?" "I want to be friends," Izuku responded with his hand held out. "I'm Izuku, why do you want to be friends?" Shuto asked quietly. Izuku looked at him. "Because you look lonely, and I don't want you to be. We have a wide selection of toys to play with." Tenya yelled out from his spot behind Izuku. Shuto mumbled. "What's your favorite hero?" "Mine is Nedzu," Izuku asked the young boy. "I like my brother, Ingenium, the best," Tenya said from behind Izuku, looking at Shuto. "I like All Might, but my dad doesn't like him very much," Shuto answered with a slight pink tinge to his cheeks. "All Might is a good hero. He works well with his enhanced abilities to rescue people and defeats villains easily," Izuku replied intelligently with his hand under his chin. Tenya nodded at his words while Shuto looked at them curiously. "We can play a game of heroes. I'll be Nedzu, Tenya can be Ingenium, and you can be All Might," Izuku offered. "I don't have to be Endeavor?" Shuto asked, raising his brow. "Nope." Shuto was beginning to like this place. Nedzu was tired of Endeavor. He hasn't changed his mind about his little petty rivalry at all in these past years. He walked with him back to the room where the children were playing. Nedzu opened the door to see his child getting along well with the other two. They all seemed to be playing with some action figures of recent pro heroes. His heart grew at the sight of his son playing with a little cloth doll that he made himself a few months ago since Nedzu didn't make any merchandise. Tenya was playing his brother and Shuto was playing with a tall All Might figurine. "Shuto!" Endeavor called out to his son, scaring the three children inside the room. Nedzu fur bristled at his son's frightened face. "Endeavor, I highly recommend you lower your voice now," Nedzu offered to the tall alumni. Endeavor scoffed while his son scurried to his side, rather silent. Nedzu noticed how Shuto hid his left arm from his sight as he rushed past a gate behind his father. Nedzu narrowed his gaze to see that Shuto scratches at his covered arm. Before he could ask if the boy wanted to go to the nurse's office, Endeavor started dragging him away by his left arm. Shoto winced at his string grip while he practically dragged him away from the room. Nedzu crosses his arms with a sinister smile on his face, looking at Endeavor exiting. He turned back to Izuku to ask some questions. Did you notice anything strange, son? Nedzu approached his son. Izuku tapped his finger to his chin, remembering the playdate. He didn't really believe us when we told him we wanted to play with him and befriend. He told us his dad didn't like All Might. Strange. Anything else? Nedzu asked. He reacted scared if we yelled too loud. He, kind of scratched at his left arm every now and then. Tenya added from his place next to Izuku's side. Nedzu hummed to himself before nodding to himself. You two continue your fun. Where are you going, Dad? Izuku questioned his father as he opened the door. I'm going to call up an old friend who helped me before. I need his help for a big case I'm about to be headmaster of. And if my hunch is correct, the person in question will face a punishment worse than death. Nedzu answered with a creepy smile. Oh. Okay. Love you. Izuku commented before continuing to pick up and play with his homemade cloth doll. I love you too, little mouse. Nedzu commented before closing the door. Detective. Nice to see you again. Ready to bring down a pro hero with me. Want some tea? Nedzu greeted Naomasa, overjoyed at the possibility of getting Endeavor right where he wanted him. Oh boy. Naomasa sighed before taking his seat across from Nedzu sitting at his desk. Now, then, Nedzu gathered himself before smiling happily at the man. What is our first step to get rid of this piece of shit? Endeavor is going to go down whether or not he knows. Nedzu was tired of clenching his teeth. Tsukachi needed time to gather evidence on his end, so he recommended that Nedzu do his own recon on getting information to use against Endeavor. And what better way to do that than scheduling a playdate at Endeavor's house while he goes to work? This gives him the perfect chance to see how the house is and what the family behaves like. So while Tsukachi was skidding around his office finding anything under a rock, Nedzu was waiting patiently outside for Mrs. Todoroki to answer the door. Finally, she opened the door with a nervous smile. Hello, I have come to let Izuku have a playdate with Shoto. I'm Nedzu, principal of UA, he greeted holding out his paw, which Rei shook with practiced ease. Oh, yes. Hello, I'm Shoto's mother. You can call me Rei, I prefer it, Rei replied. Nedzu noticed how she didn't say how she was his wife, she just said that she was a mother. He placed that thought in possible evidence against Endeavor. He walked in and automatically noticed how different it was from his home. It was traditional, yes, and his was more odor, but there was a feeling to it. This house didn't feel like home, it just felt empty. Like there was no warmth, only coldness. Another piece of evidence logged away in his memory. Come this way to the living room. Shoto was waiting there, Rei said, leading the way. Nezu followed her, noticing small things along the journey. There was no family portraits or pictures in general of the family members. He narrowed his eyes as he noticed how Shoto sat alone on the couch when they entered. That was strange. Where was Endeavor's other children? Nedzu let Izuku go so he could run up to his newest friend to play. Rei smiled softly at Shoto's happy face. Would you mind if I looked around the house? I never get invited to many house parties. Nedzu asked with a smile. Rei nodded. Nedzu smiled bigger and gently responded, Great. He went off, leaving his son in the care of the gentle mother. Nedzu's smile dropped as he ventured around the house. The traditional Japanese houses were always confusing to him, but before long, he found a giant room. A feeling settled in his stomach that didn't feel good. No, not good at all. He opened the screen door and held in utter horror he felt. It was like a flashback to when he was trapped. That was the feeling of no escape that he got from the room. He noticed how there was dried bloodstains on the floor. He stepped inside quietly to see the many training equipment up on the walls. He didn't get a good feeling about this. Who are you? A male voice said from behind him. He turned around to see bright red hair and electric blue eyes in the form of a preteen boy. Am I a bear or a mouse? Hello, I'm Nedzu, he greeted to the boy. The boy scrunched his eyebrows. Oh, the principal of UA? What are you doing here? My son is having a playdate with your younger brother, Shoto. Nedzu replied, approaching the preteen, eager to get out of this room. The boy stepped back in mild fear. You aren't going to train me, right? He asked with a tone to his voice that Nedzu recognized as fear. No. I'm not. Does your father train you? Nedzu questioned. Electric blue eyes looked over the animal with a quirk in silence. He deducted that this might be his only chance. He narrowed his eyes before stating to Nedzu, no, training isn't the right word for what he does to me or my family. Rei was sitting on the couch watching her son play with his new friend. Shoto would turn 4 in 2 months and she dreaded it so soon. She didn't want to be another maker to Endeavor's master plan, but she didn't want her son to be treated the way Endeavor would if he turns out to have the perfect combination he is looking for. She was so scared for her children. She doesn't want this to happen anymore. From the corner of her eyes, she noticed her second youngest, Natsuo. Hello, Natsuo. What are you doing? Just watching, Mama. Does Shoto have a friend? Natsuo asked. Rei smiled, yes, just a few days ago. Just then, Nedzu came around the corner with her eldest, Tuya. He motioned for her to come to him. Rei raised a brow, very curious to see what Nedzu could want. She excused herself to Natsuo, leaving him to watch over the 2 younger kids. Yes? She asked, looking between her son and Nedzu. Nedzu raised his somber-looking eyes. Tell me everything. I want to help you and your family get away from him. Rei gasped as tears started to fall silently. She could finally have help. She nodded before leading the 2 away to tell her story, while the other 2 children watched over the youngest play with his new friend. Natsuo and Fuyumi smiled at their brother while wondering what her mother was talking about so fervently with the principal. After an hour, the 3 exited the room with matching looks of calmness. All right, Izuku, time to head home. We will see your friend and his family again very soon, Nedzu said to his young son. Izuku looked up and nodded happily at his dad. Okay, Dad. Bye, Sho-chan. I'll see you later, Izuku retorted to his friend while walking away, waving at him. Shoto waved back with a relaxed smile at his very excited friend. Nedzu nodded to Rei and Tuya before heading outside. He had a lot to tell to Tsukachi. Alright, Endeavor. Let's play a game, Nedzu thought to himself with a sadistic smile growing on his face while he made his way to the police station. When he entered, Izuku took in a gasp at the sight of 4 familiar faces. Uncle Zawa? Uncle Ten? Uncle Zashi. Aunt Nem. Izuku greeted loudly at the sight of his 4 favorite aunt and uncles. Eraserhead hid his gentle smile under his scarf while Present Mike yelled openly in excitement. Ingenium smiled under his night mask while Midnight gladly welcomed him with a big greeting. Midnight welcomed, Hey, Izuku. How have you been, little guy? You are growing so tall. Izuku ran up to her for Midnight to wrap him up in a hug. Hey, where my hug? Present Mike complained loudly, only to receive a loving hug from Izuku by Midnight passing him to the loud blonde. Ingenium received his nice big hug from Present Mike passing him the small child. Hello, buddy. Haven't seen you in a while. Eraserhead took the child from his other uncle with his gray scarf. Hey, problem child, Eraserhead greeted softly, ruffling up Izuku's curls. I'm heading to Tsukachi's office to talk about a new case involving Endeavor, Nedzu replied to his old students. Endeavor? Man, I don't really like that guy. He's all full of himself. Present Mike responded. All full of himself, really? Honestly, best way to describe him is very angry at seemingly nothing and everything at the same time. Ingenium retorted. Why are you doing a case on him, Nedzu? Midnight asked quietly while Eraserhead distracted Izuku with his dancing scarf. It's not safe to talk about it here, but let it be known that Endeavor will be taken down for what he has been doing. Do you need our help with anything, sir? Ingenium asked politely. Well, Izuku doesn't really know what the whole thing will come to eventually. I would like you 4 to take care of him while I bring him down, can you do that? Nedzu questioned with a calm smile directed toward the smiling Izuku. Babysit the little guy, like we used to do. Sure. No problems. Present Mike answered happily, ready to spoil his nephew. Good. I'll go talk to Tsukachi, I'll leave Izuku in your hands for this short period. Nedzu said. The four nodded at the easy order, ignoring the sadistic smile that Nedzu was gaining thinking about what he could do to Endeavor. Tsukachi was in his office gathering details from his sources about Endeavor dealing with illegal practice of quirk marriage when Nedzu strolled in looking happy to rip some limbs of a certain someone. He is going down tonight, Nedzu stated in front of Tsukachi's desk. Nedzu gets to take Endeavor down. Tsukachi sat down at his office desk with his head in his hand while the others searched for more evidence of Endeavor's examples of abusive behaviors while dealing with citizens. He had already gathered video evidence of Endeavor putting innocent lives in danger with his strong fire quirk. Nedzu had already prepared many evidence of reports of the amount of damage that Endeavor had made while dealing with villain attacks. Tsukachi couldn't tell how much Nedzu had gathered in such a short time, but by the sheer height of it, he could tell that Endeavor was in some deep trouble. He felt nervous for anyone else to cross Nedzu to this degree. Did you find anything else to drag his name in the mud? Nedzu asked as he organized the papers he collected into different folders while his legs slightly swung on his short high chair. A lot actually. More than I thought I would find in such a short amount of time. It makes me wonder how no one ever looked closely on how much damage he did. Tsukachi said as he scrolled down yet another source reporting on the worst things Endeavor has caused. It sure seems that way, doesn't it? Nedzu stated unnervingly sadistically smiling as he stacked all the evidence against him that was slowly growing in weight and length. I can't wait for everyone to see how much of a terrible individual he is. How bad he is being his facade of heroism. Based on what you told me, I am eager to see the faces of unsuspecting people who doesn't know what he has done. I'm honestly waiting myself. Nedzu replied with a gleeful smile, already plotting what he could possibly do to the poor excuse of a father. I can't wait for them to know what he has been hiding from the public's eyes. The four uncles and aunt watched over Izuku at his home while Nedzu dealt with most of the digging. Eraserhead gladly handed over what he had gathered in his relatively short time working the underground hero life. Hizashi and Tensei told their own experiences talking with him and how they felt strange in his glaring eyes. Namiri told of her unpleasant conversation with him regarding ranks and how he smirked proudly at saying how his offspring will surely beat All Might before he could even retire. Nedzu took all of it into consideration, gathering each and every dirty detail that will prolong Endeavor's stay in a cell. After many long hours of gathering, they finally gained enough evidence to use against Endeavor in court. Finally. Exactly when he predicted it will end. Now it's time for the second step of his plan that would commence tomorrow as scheduled. Nedzu smiled as he guided Rei and her children into the same room of Izuku and Tenya. Without Endeavor knowledge, his family had been sneaked out and was now been held safely in Nedzu's protection. Endeavor was already waiting in his office for them to talk about a certain issue, but little does he know, the only problem is him. You are welcome to stay here for as long as you need. I will take care of the big issue that holds your family back from the happy life you all deserve. Tensei will watch over you all with his little brother, Tenya. After this day, you won't be under his control anymore. Nedzu explained while Rei smiled at him gratefully. Thank you so much, Rei replied with a single joyful tear rolling down her cheek. She thanked him once again before following her eldest son into the room. Izuku's giggle was the last happy thing Nedzu heard before closing the door safely behind him. Nedzu adopted a neutral frown that replaced his smile. He breathed out and headed to his office where Endeavor waited. He opened the door, ignoring Endeavor's complaining of him taking so long. He climbed up into his seat to face the fiery man. What seems to be a big problem that I was forced to come meet you to deal with? Endeavor asked, arms folded across his chest. Yes. The problem is you. Nedzu said before taking a well-needed sip of tea. Endeavor eyes twitched. What? You heard me, flaming industrial waste disposal. Nedzu snickered, playing with the teabag string sticking out of his teacup. How dare you? Endeavor started to say before Nedzu brought one of his paws up to silence him. How dare I? Oh no. No. You don't get to say that, dear hero. Nedzu stated before taking a long sip of his tea. He paused to look into the small photo frame of his son and him for motivation to continue with his plan. The police are on their way now. I spent a lot of time gathering information against you to use in court to bring your dark dealings out into the light. Now, it is finally the time for you to face your future. I can't believe this. I'm a pro-hero. Endeavor complained loudly, flames bruising higher from his shoulders. You want me to be the bad guy? Alright, I'm the bad guy. Nedzu stated, staring straight into Endeavor's eyes. You are going to jail. You piece of garbage. He clapped his paws together with each pause between words. Before Endeavor could say anything, Tsukachi came into the office with Eraserhead right behind him, scarf at the ready in case Endeavor put up any fight. Nedzu watched with a small smile that grew more sadistic as Endeavor was apprehended and dragged out of his office. With his short amount of alone time, he sipped his tea while laughing maniacally. With all the evidence shown at the court, Endeavor was found guilty. It also helped that the young Toya and Rei stepped up and relayed what their lives were like while the other three sat in patience, waiting until the end. Reports of his rude and terrible behavior towards people around incidents. Receipts of the illegal quirk marriage. And every last piece of detail they could dig up contributed to the case greatly. His overpriced lawyers tried to dig their way out of the long unending hole, but they were no match for Nedzu's intelligence for gathering the plan. The judge banged his gavel, deciding the final punishment for the guilty former hero. Endeavor's hero license will be taken away. The children will be under the full custody of Miss Rei. And, what was that last bit again? Oh yes. Nedzu will be allowed to have one last talk with him before he is sent to his jail cell. Hello, Todoroki Enji, formerly known as Endeavor. Nedzu's mocking voice called out to him, slightly muffled. What? What is this place? Enji questioned as he looked around the hauntingly abandoned-looking area. He looked down to find his wrists in chains to prevent him from using his quirk to full capacity. The cuffs allowed him to use his quirk to a certain very small amount. He wasn't in his costume anymore, he was stripped of his hero status. He was dressed solely in a black shirt and pants, bare feet against the cold cement of the fake street. Nedzu's voice echoed from wherever he was hiding. Oh? You don't remember the old training grounds that you used to try to become a hero? Well, so much for that. Why did you bring me here? What do you have planned? Enji asked as he started to walk around to find the source of the chilling principal's voice. Who? Me? Well, that is simple to answer. Nedzu's cheerful voice answered before a twisted anger tone seemed to creep in. Humans like you disgust me, Nedzu's voice sounded from the speaker in front of him. Humans like you don't care about who they hurt to get their way. The way you saw your own family was the way the scientists saw me. Not alive, not worthy of any rights, only as an experiment to play with. Shut up. You have no right to defend yourself for what you did to them. What you did to your children was unforgivable. What you did to get them was unbelievable. And the way you obtained your wife is inexcusable. Nedzu continued as he prepared each and every one of his machines to attack on full. Your therapist had informed me of what you tried to excuse yourself with. Ha 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 ha. You think that excuse will help you? I did it to make them stronger. Bullshit. You did it for your own personable, petty, one-sided rivalry between All Might. No matter what you say, it would dig you out of the hole that you put yourself in. And now, it is time for me to have some fun and play with you. Ha 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 ha. Silly excuse for a hero, try to survive. Come on, Endeavor. I want to play a game. Nedzu added before he started the first obstacle. Enji's eyes widened as a large object casted a huge shadow that covered his own very quickly. He gritted his teeth as his eyes shrieked upon seeing what he was up against. Nedzu's sadistic smile only grew as he peeked at a sweat drop rolling down his victim's face. With the most satisfying laugh, he started up the first punishing machine that he created, his own design. Enji was taken away in stronger quirk-resistant cuffs to his new home in jail. The officers noticed how cheerful Nedzu waved at the former pro hero's back. The man in question seemed to be quite shaken at what happened inside the area. His face was frozen into a panicked look with his skin paled and eyes looked frustratingly scared. Hey Papa. Are you done having fun? Izuku questioned before his father scooped him up slightly off the ground into a hug. I'm done with my work, but the only fun I have is playing with you, my little mouse. Izuku giggled as his father tickled his neck with his fuzzy paw. Yes, Nedzu surely didn't enjoy the punishment as much as he thought he would. He only regrets that he didn't ask for more time. Oh well, at least the time can be spent spending time with his most favorite human in the whole world. Izuku smiled as he touched his forehead to his father's. This is what he cared most for. The moments he spent with his beloved son, settling in. Nedzu, of course, took care of all the necessities for the family, the Fukuyama family. They no longer had to go by Todoroki since the trash receptacle himself was no longer their puppet master. Nedzu helped Rei take the cold traditional house and sell it for a warm, modern home for them. Nedzu recommended one 4-bedroom apartment that was in the same protective building that he lived in, just a few floors down. It was more welcoming than the other house, and it would allow for Nedzu to watch over them while keeping a distance. And now with their recent move, catch me if you can. Izuku yelled out in excitement as he raced past his father. Okay. Shoto called out after him, running to catch up with the speedy toddler. It allowed the two families to come together for playdates whenever. Rei laughed as she watched her youngest run after his friend. Be careful, Shoto. I will, Mama. Shoto exclaimed with his hand outstretched to almost catch his friend. I'm quite delighted to see how this situation turned out. Nedzu said with a smile on his face, sipping the tea Ms. Fukuyama made. This is delicious. He complimented her. Thank you. She replied with her own gentle smile, her hair getting braided by her daughter, Fuyumi. Hey. Tuya greeted, standing next to the principal. Yes? Nedzu asked. Tuya breathed out before grinning, thanks. You are the first and only person to help us out. I figured no one would listen since he was a pro hero, but you did. You helped me and my family get out of there. No need to thank me, that is what real heroes do. Nedzu responded, emphasizing the real. And besides, you acted as your own family's hero too. Really, how? Tuya asked, turning around for a moment to see his little brother running behind him. You approached me to talk about your situation. It takes a lot of guts to actually stand up and protect. I had a suspicion, but it wasn't confirmed until after you confronted me on it. You should be proud of the true heroism you showed to protect your family. Nedzu explained as he watched his son hide from the young Shoto behind a tree before scaring him by peeking his head out. Tuya coughed, trying to draw attention away to his cheeks going red at the praise. Thank you. Nedzu smiled almost fondly at the young teen. You are welcome. Got ya, Shochan. Izuku said loudly, hugging his friend around the waist. Ah. Shoto sighed when Izuku hugged him, blushing at the affection of his best friend. You did. All right. Hug time. Natsuo shouted, ganging up on the two younger boys to hug them tight to him in excitement. Oh. Fuyumi mumbled before walking fast to them hug, joining the warm comfort. Yay. Group hug. Izuku shouted in glee, waving down Tuya and Rei to join the hug. The two looked at each other and shrugged, they couldn't say no to the little guy. While they approached, Izuku looked at his dad. Come on, Papa. Oh, alright, little mouse. Nedzu responded, traveling through the grass to join the hug that his son had initiated. Hey Mom? Tuya asked, approaching his mother who was in the kitchen, chopping up ingredients for a soup she was preparing. His mother glanced over to him, pausing in her chopping. Yes, Tuya? Tuya breathed out and asked, can I get my hair dyed? I just don't want to look like him, it's bad enough that my quirk. Shush. There is nothing wrong with you or you quirk, honey. You quirk is very strong. Rei responded, but I keep hurting myself because my body can handle it. Tuya agreed back. Then, Nedzu can possibly help us contact someone to help your body get used to the flames. Or make your body more accustomed to it. I'm sure we can find a way to work around that. Rei explained, taking a knife and chopping up the last small pepper for the dinner she was making. That doesn't help that I look like his replica, Tuya started to say before his mother shook her head in disagreement. Rei interrupted him by grasping his shoulders gently. You don't. You look like my son. If you want your hair dyed, I have no problem with it. Really? Tuya asked, moving his hand to touch his fiery red hair. Yes, really. But you have to wait for piercings until you are well into high school, mister. Rei wagged her finger with a smile. Tuya laughed at that rule of piercings and nodded. Thanks, Mom. Tuya replied gratefully, allowing himself to be pulled into a hug by his mother. They both swayed in the embrace in the middle of the kitchen. For once, he didn't feel cold at the atmosphere or the burning sensation through his body. He just felt his mother's warmth. This is what he was missing his life in that forsaken house. I love this bed. It's so comfy. And this pillow. Oh, it's so soft. Natsuo said, admiring his own room with Fuyumi sitting in his desk watching him gush over everything. I'm glad. Fuyumi smiled. Natsuo tilted his head. You're glad that our beds are comfy? She laughed at his question. Well, yes. And that all of us are safe. Yeah. Me too. Now we can play with each other whenever we want. No more training, no more staying up in our rooms all day, and no more boredom. We can all have fun. Natsuo explained with his eyes shining in happiness. We can finally have a family game night or a movie night. Like happy normal families do. Yeah. We can. And nothing can stop us from doing that. Fuyumi said, making her brother cheer. She laughed at his outgoing behavior before they both got called down for dinner. Shoto ate his soup happily, swinging his legs from his high-seated chair. He just finished a playdate with Izuku and he was absolutely starving for his mother's home-cooked meal. The family ate together with chatter around the table about everyone's day in the comfortable apartment while Shoto focused on the yummy food. Hey, Mom? Fuyumi asked. Yes? Rei answered back. Natsuo smiled. Can we watch a movie tonight? Rei thought about it while she answered back. We can. But I don't know where we'll find a movie to rent. I don't have any movies for the television. Knock knock. Rei looked back towards the front door. She wondered who that might be before peeking through the peephole. She was surprised to see Nedzu and Izuku standing outside with something in their hands. Hello? She asked, opening the door. I believe it is movie night? Nedzu asked, holding hands with an excited Izuku. Movie. Izuku cheered with some of his favorite animated movies in his hands. Oh well. Would you look at that? She whispered, letting the two into her new home. She was locking the door when she heard the excited cheers from her children. She smiled before turning around. She was so glad everything turned out okay. Here come the sadness. Izuku, Shoto and Tenya were all having a splendid playdate at Nedzu's apartment with Nedzu watching over them as well as Tensei and Tuya. Rei was watching over her other children, allowing Tuya to step up as a big protective brother to his youngest sibling. Tensei had the day off from his daily trail to spend more time with his little brother, especially because of Tenya's new development. I have a quirk. My legs have engines now. Tenya exclaimed happily, showing off his engine ports jutting out from his calves. Izuku gasped in wonder. Wow. That's so awesome. It's kind of like Uncle Tensei, but it's on your legs. Tenya nodded, growing a grin on his face. I know. Now I can be more like my brother and be a hero just like him. I can't wait until I get my quirk. Izuku pumped his fists excitedly, filled with anticipation. Shoto commented, me too. Shoto, you already got your quirk. Tuya interrupted with a gentle reminder. Remember? You had both of your sides lit up at dinner a few days ago. Oh, Shoto retorted, I forgot about that. Oh. Really? Izuku exclaimed. Can I see? Shoto nodded before showing Izuku his left hand with a small flame and his right hand with a small icicle forming. Thanks, Shoto answered back, a small blush forming on his cheeks from the praise. His older brother snickered behind him. Nedzu brought up some new for his son. If you want us to go see, we can go talk to Recovery Girl this week to see about your quirk. I'm sure she will be very happy to see you. Izuku smiled, yay. I cannot wait until I get my quirk. Then I can help Papa, and we can all be heroes. Shoto offered. Tenya nodded, yes. And we could be like a trio, working together to stop the mean evildoers. This is so exciting. Ah! Izuku yelled out happily, making his friend giggle, this overwhelming emotion of excitement. Izuku couldn't wait to get the news about his quirk. I'm sorry, sweetie. Your X-ray results came back, and they show you to be quirkless. Nedzu watched his son's face grow heartbroken as he dropped his Nedzu doll onto the floor. Nedzu remembers the day that Izuku hot-glued fabric and fluff together to try to make his papa into a he asked. His son said that he wanted to have mercy of his father, so he can support him. Nedzu thought it was adorable, and that day he explained that Izuku already supports him by being the best son he could ever have. He also remembers that Izuku did the same with Eraserhead since the underground hero didn't make any merchandise at all, so Izuku constructed and painted a long piece of glaze to act as the scarf he always wears. Safe to say, Aizawa was blushing so badly that Izuku thought he was affected by a quirk to turn him into a tomato. Nedzu was thankful that Recovery Girl broke it to him softly, since he knew that any doctor would do just the opposite. They would have probably crushed his dreams very harshly. But he was still upset that Izuku's heart was broken. After Recovery Girl gave him reassurance that everything was going to be okay and gave him some gummy bears, Nedzu patted Izuku's back to calm his sadness. Nedzu prompted, "Cheer up, little mouse. Everything will be perfectly alright. Trust me." But Izuku didn't say a word back, just slightly nodded to his words, barely acknowledging what he was saying. Izuku clutched his handmade plush closer to him on the way back to their home. Nedzu watched as Izuku sulked to his room. His emotions felt like they were infecting the air in the room. Nedzu immediately grabbed his phone when Izuku closed the door to his room. He needs reassurance and support more than anything right now. So time to call in the rest of the family. "Hello? It's Izuku, come as fast as you can." "He needs hugs," Nedzu said, straight and to the point to the person on the other end of the line. Nedzu continued to make calls to everyone that could help bring Izuku back into a better mood. Heaven only knows how much reinforcement Izuku needs right now. About 5 minutes after his last call, the doorbell rang, followed by a series of different placed knocks against the wood. Nedzu opened the door to his relatively new neighbors, the Fukuyama family, who were standing outside the door slightly breathless. Elevator was taking too long. "How is he? Where is he?" Rei asked, letting her children slip past her into the house. "Izuku? He is in his room right now, knock before you go in. He isn't having a good day, so just your presence will cheer him up." Nedzu responded back to the youngest. Shoto nodded with a determined look before marching over to Izuku's room to comfort his friend. Tuya stood with Natsuo and Fuyumi, slowly venturing into the room when Shoto was granted access. About 10 minutes after their arrival, Izuku agreed to move out from his room into the living room to get more air. Izuku sat on the couch between Tuya and Shoto while still holding onto his plush for dear life. Then the doorbell rang, which opened up to a frantic Present Mike dragging behind Eraserhead with Midnight right behind them. "We heard the news." Midnight greeted, taking off her heels in a hurry to rush to wherever Izuku needed the comforting hug. Present Mike looked at Izuku's bedroom before turning to Nedzu. "Is my little listener alright? Where is?" By the time they got the answer of where Izuku was, Eraserhead had already claimed him in a hug. "Too slow." Eraserhead mouthed to his friends, patting Izuku's back while he started to calm down from his sadness. When they all settled down, Tenya showed up finally with an out-of-breath Tensei. "Traffic was a nightmare, so I just ran here. Phew, I took the stairs too." Tensei wheezed out, taking a bottle of refreshing grape juice from his former principal. Tenya rushed over to where Shoto was sitting to also support his friend. "Izuku, I'm here to embrace you and hug." Izuku sniffed, "I like hugs." Tenya made sure to give a good, bear hug to one of his best friends. Shoto joined in for the group hug. It wasn't until several more minutes of unending quiet support from his close friends and family was Izuku finally ready to start crying. "I'm sorry." Izuku cried out, tears unleashing from his eyes. Fuyumi reached over to give him a tissue. She was prepared if something like this were to happen. "What?" Tenya questioned. "Why are you sorry?" Shoto asked, tilting his head. Tuya placed a hand on his shoulder, not knowing what Izuku's news will be. Izuku cried into his plush, burying his face in the fabric. "I don't have a quirk, now I don't know if we can be a trio." "What do you mean?" "Of course, you can still be a trio." Midnight gently replied to him, brushing her hand through his curls to calm his tears. Izuku sniffled, tears running down his cheeks. He turned to his papa, the one he looked up to the most. "Can I still be a hero without one? Can I still be a hero like you?" Nedzu's eyes softened at his son's honest question. "Indeed. Of course, you can." Izuku's tears started to slow down. "Really? I can, yeah. All you need is the right training and teaching to become one. And you need to work your hardest." Present Mike encouraged, Natsuo nodding enthusiastically with his words. "That means we can still be a trio?" Tenya asked before Izuku could. "Yes. And I can teach you guys the speedy skills of being a hero." Midnight can teach you 3 about what you can do for your costumes. Tensei states, growing excited at the incoming future plans. I will teach you about self-defense and support items. And Mike can teach you guys more skills on long-reach attacks. Eraserhead explained, making Izuku's eye light up in hope. Nedzu smiled, and I can teach you 3 one of the most important skills, strategy. I will focus on instructing on how to fight with a plan in mind that will bring down the villains more easily. Izuku's tears dried up at last with a small sniffle. Shoto bumped shoulders with him, making a giggle erupt from his throat. Nedzu smiled as everyone clamored around, talking about what they could do in the future to help the trio become heroes. Tuya watched with a smile as his little brother grew a little more out of his shy shell. Rei leaned Fuyumi and Natsuo's heads towards her in a slight hug. While the 3 best friends laughed at each other when Eraserhead wrapped present Mike up in his scarf for screaming next to his ear, Nedzu smiled, coming closer to rest his paw on his son's shoulder. He would give up the world to have this moment last forever. Nedzu opened his eyes expecting to see the cool light blue of his bedroom ceiling. But instead he opened his eyelids up to the white metal above his head. Confused, he slowly sat up only to freeze upon realizing where he was. He looked around to find himself back in the cage, the horrid cage from all those years ago. The cage that the human scientists forced him in to run tests. The place that he burned to the ground after he escaped. Why is he here? He looked down at his uncovered feet, studying the blinding white floor of the cage they forced him into. The familiar coldness felt horrible against his bare paws. Why is he back here? He escaped. His body froze up. The fear started to creep up his throat when he started to hear murmurs coming closer to where he was. He should be back here. Ready the next test subject, a jumbled voice mumbled right by his cage. Nedzu's ears flickered at where the sound was coming from. Slowly, he turned his gaze in order to not alert the scientists that he was awake. If he was awake, they would begin the test straight away. Nedzu's pupils shrank when his gaze drifted to the small body that one of the scientists was holding. The small body of a boy with curly green hair. Nedzu's breath got caught in his throat. The scientists must have recaptured him and Izuku. What were they planning? He thought they were dead. They can't possibly be back. Are these scientists new? Did they kidnap him and his adopted son right as his life was starting to calm down? His claws dug into his furry arm. Slowly, he approached the cage wall, not making a sound so he could creep up on them. Nedzu's gaze locked on to where they were strapping a sleeping Izuku to a table with leather straps to hold his feet and hands back. Izuku slowly started to come back to consciousness. His Tritrian eyes immediately shot open to the scientists surrounding him. Nedzu locked eyes with him right as the scientists held him down by his restraints. What? Quiet. One of the scientists said, moving past Nedzu's cage. His voice seemed muddled despite Izuku's voice coming out clearly. Seems the new test subject has woken up. No matter. It will just make the procedure a little less bearable. Izuku looked so scared, tied down to the table. He moved his limbs, trying to escape, but the strong grip of the other scientists wouldn't let him move more than an inch. His terrified gaze met Nedzu's once again. Papa? Nedzu shook himself out of his frozen state, immediately trying to pick the lock on his cage while the scientists were distracted. His tiny claws scarred against the metal. He pounded in the cage while the main scientists took a hold of a syringe. No! Don't you dare! Nedzu called out. His normal soft voice called out strongly in the quiet room. The scientist came closer to a struggling Izuku who continued to call out for Nedzu. The scientist's grin grew almost 5 sizes as he came closer to Izuku with the giant needle. Nedzu just got his cage unlocked when Izuku screamed out in the most haunting way. His scream echoed towards Nedzu, who clenched his paws tightly together from the sound. Izuku called out desperately, Papa. Nedzu woke up in a cold sweat with the feeling of tugging at his shirt sleeve. He looked down frantically to see his son at his bedside. Izuku had a worried expression on his face that seemed to deflate slightly when he had woken up. Nedzu questioned, Izuku? Where did you? The secret closet door. Izuku started simply, crawling up next to his father with some difficulty with the large mattress. Nedzu shifted over to give him some space on the comfortable memory foam mattress. I heard you making sad noises. Were you having a bad dream? More like a nightmare, Nedzu responded. His expression remained calm, so he didn't worry Izuku even though all he felt was dread. If people discovered that Izuku was his son, would his nightmare become true? Would Izuku be taken away from him? He would never allow that to happen. Nobody would get away with trying to hurt his son. Oh. Are you better now, Papa? Izuku asked, raising his head to meet Nedzu's soft gaze. Nedzu smiled, holding his son closer to him. Better now, little mouse. Thanks to you, Papa, to the rescue. Izuku was at the age where he could attend elementary school and learn with other children. Nedzu was dreading the day when he could no longer keep Izuku inside his office to watch after him. He originally thought of just tutoring him on his own, but thought of the isolation it might give Izuku. He wanted Izuku to reach out and make connections through new friends, even though it broke his heart to not have him by his side, so he simply decided on a close-by elementary school with good reviews from parents. He enlisted Eraserhead to sign Izuku up as his guardian since he didn't want to intimidate the school just yet. He signed Izuku up as Midoriya Izuku since with some past searching her given name was Midoriya. But I'm going to miss you, Papa. Izuku whined, holding onto his papa's hand as Nedzu walked Izuku to the front of the UA steps for Aizawa to trade off. Nedzu smiled at him. I will too, little mouse. But don't worry, the school day doesn't last as long as you think it does. Before you know it, you will be back with me at UA. Promise? Izuku asked, his eyes filled with stars. I promise. Now try to make new friends at this school and just be yourself. Nedzu added. Izuku smiled brightly. Okay, Papa. Love you as well, Nedzu responded, waving as he watched his son being escorted by a casual dressed Aizawa. Come on, kid, Aizawa replied fondly, taking a hold of Izuku's hand to walk with him to his new school. Izuku grinned and took his uncle's hand. He was sad to be separated from his father, but was very excited to make new friends. The hours didn't seem to fly by fast enough for Nedzu since all he did in his office was wonder about how Izuku was doing in his new school. He kept getting a feeling like he should have just went with his original idea, but he waved it off as the parental separation anxiety kicking in. It took many hours before Nedzu was free to go back to reclaim his son from Uncle Aizawa at the front of UA. But Nedzu was worried since Izuku was acting very quiet. He would have been smiling and jumping around by now since he was a little ball of energy. Why does he look so down? Bye-bye, Uncle Zawa. Izuku said, waving before heading inside without waiting for his papa. Nedzu looked back towards his son in confusion before turning back to Aizawa. What happened? Aizawa looked at him with a look of worry behind his tired eyes. I have no idea. Izuku has been acting strangely since I picked him up. Something might have happened in the school. I tried to start a conversation when we were walking back, but he only nodded and replied in very short answers like he wasn't really paying attention to what I asked. Strange. I'll go ask him about what's happening. Nedzu replied. Good, I'll head out for my early patrol. See you, Aizawa responded, looking very worried. Yes, see you. Nedzu replied, waving off his past student before going inside to check on his son. When he walked in, however, he was greeted by Tuya, who looked very concerned. Hey, what happened to Izuku? Tuya asked, the concern in his eyes shining through his pupils. Nedzu shrugged. I have no clue, but I have a hunch that something bad must have happened. Why do you ask? Well, when I said hello, he kind of did something. He was acting like he was hiding something. Like a bruise or a cut on his arm. Like, what? Nedzu questioned. Tuya looked off to the side to see if anyone was listening to their conversation before leaning in, was acting like Shoto did when we were still in the care of that asshole. Nedzu's eyes seemed to flare up when Tuya looked into them. He almost stepped back when the energy of hatred that Nedzu seemed to put out almost immediately after he said that. Oh? Really? Then, that won't do now, will it? I'll go talk to Izuku before heading over to that elementary school to give them a piece of my mind if that is truly the case. Nedzu walked past the hallways much to the fear of the students from the sadistic look in his eyes as he planned a very serious lawsuit against a school. Izuku? He called out smiling as he opened his office. His sadistic anger vanished when he heard his son's sobs coming from his office desk. He walked over to his desk only to bend down when he saw his young son curled up under the desk crying his eyes out. Little mouse? Nedzu asked, trying to comfort Izuku's cries. Izuku mumbled between sobs, I don't want to go back. I want to stay here. Can I just stay here, Papa? Nedzu looked at Izuku softly. Izuku, what happened? Tell me, please. Izuku sniffled and began to recount his day. After Uncle Zawa dropped me off, the teacher asked us to introduce ourselves. Each kid told their name, quirk, and what they wanted to be when they grew up. Nedzu nodded, wiping Izuku's face with a tissue. When it got to me, I was just being myself like you told me. Hey, I'm Midoriya Izuku, I'm quirkless and I want to be a hero. They all laughed, everyone, even the teachers. When I told them I wasn't joking, their attitude changed. The teachers didn't believe me when another kid lied about me stealing their pencil and made me go in timeout. They didn't let me go to recess after one of the kids hurt my arm. When I tried to tell them that the other kid hurt me, they brushed me off and said I was lying. I wasn't lying. Izuku sobbed. The kids kept telling me how I couldn't be a hero since I had no quirk. They kept pushing me, teasing me about becoming a hero's punching bag, and lying about me to the teachers. Please. Don't make me go back. Izuku pleaded. You won't go back ever again to that school. You know why? Nedzu asked his son, who started to calm down from his sniffling. Why? Izuku looked up to his father, who started to smile back at him. I'll just teach you here. Right here in UA. Nedzu explained proudly. Really? Izuku asked excitedly. Yes. You won't ever have to go back to normal high school if you don't want to. And if you do, I will just set you up in the same one Ida is enrolled in so he can protect you if you wished for when you grow up. Nedzu answered back before Izuku stopped him from saying anything further by hugging onto him. Yay! Papa can teach me. Izuku cheered. Yes, I can. I can begin teaching you as soon as next week. Why until next week? Izuku questioned, tilting his head as Nedzu placed him down as he started a cartoon movie in a small television he set up just for Izuku. Oh, because Papa has some business to attend to make sure certain people sorry for a bad deed that have caused. Nedzu answered, exiting out of his office to go directly to the school to give them a piece of his mind. Don't worry, I have Tuya to come watch over you in just a moment. Nedzu walked fast down the first-year hallway to arrive at the class Tuya was in. Fukuyama Tuya. Report to my office immediately. Nedzu? The teacher questioned as Tuya stood up quickly to get to his office. He is excused. Nedzu reported to the teacher before he moved his attention to the first-year teenager with his dyed black and purple hair. I'm going out for a bit to have a word with that school. You watch over Izuku while I'm gone, Nedzu whispered to him in the hallway. Right, go kick some ass, Tuya commented with it, walking off in the direction Izuku was in. Oh please, they will wish they had no behind after I'm done with them. Nedzu answered back threateningly as he strutted right outside to get to his car. When Nedzu showed up to the school office after all the children went home, every employee was shocked he was there. Nedzu? Principal of UA? Why are you here? The secretary asked with widened eyes. Her little antennas were straight up. To talk with the principal of this establishment on recent matters concerning why my son exactly came home crying. Why you have a son? Nedzu smiled sadistically as the teachers all looked scared. Oh yes, Midoriya Izuku. Ring a bell to anyone here? He was signed in by someone else. Yes, me being his father was certain to bring more attention than I ever wanted for him. I wanted him to have an honest experience with the public, Nedzu responded before the look in his eyes turned dark when one of the teachers paled at hearing the name. It seems it was my mistake to trust just anybody, teacher or not, with taking care of my son. The principal came out of his office from the ruckus outside only to freeze up when he saw the ever-threatening look on Nedzu's face. Before the principal could say anything, Nedzu slammed down lawsuit papers on the table. This is my official statement. I'm suing you for what you have done to my son. These papers list down everything from bullying to discrimination to a restraining order on every single person here to stay far away from me and my son ever again. I will see all of you in court. Nedzu said, walking off after successfully seeing the principal look as if he soiled his pants. For the next week between being the principal of UA and a father, Nedzu was going to the courthouse to see what was the right punishment for the school. In his eyes, it was simple. Getting rid of everyone. The school wasn't the problem, the people in it was the issue. So each person was fired from their positions to never teach again in that school or anyone in that area. The only way for them to teach again is by going to a sort of rehab program that teaches them to respect, stop bullying and discrimination and more. The program made sure that they understand the meaning of their bad ways by going into very tough learning practices. They also had to renew their teaching licenses after all of that if they ever wanted to step foot into a classroom again. The school was under new management by people who Nedzu personally picked out from multiple colleges across the country. He made sure they had good views on the world and absolutely made sure that they dealt with bullying when they first see it. The children who hurt his precious Izuku also got a talking to from him and their parents for exactly what they did. The families got restraining orders as well, just in case. Nedzu walked into his office after a long day of court work to find Tuya hanging out with Izuku. He looked even closer to find they were both napping on the chair. He smiled at the two, happy that they were more comfortable with their new life. Tuya has his family finally happy and Izuku didn't have to get hurt by discrimination. That reminds Nedzu. He should start a quirkless anti-bullying and discrimination type of charity to help people like Izuku grow up safely. What is the most important thing to do if you are a hero in a rescue situation? Nedzu asked, holding up a picture of a hero next to a burning building. Saving the people who need help and making sure they are okay with a medic or emergency responders. Izuku replied quickly. Nedzu nodded, correct. Now what is 12 multiplied by 6? 72? Izuku hesitated before answering with a question. Right. Nedzu congratulated before moving on to the next problem. It has only been a few weeks since Nedzu had taken Izuku out of that wretched elementary school and began teaching him in his office and sometimes at home. Nedzu wouldn't have it any other way. Nedzu smiled as Izuku continued his work in his little notebook when Nedzu switched over to his next topic that he thought Izuku would be the most interested in. So, how do you feel about analyzing some quirks? Nedzu asked. Yeah. Izuku looked excited when Nedzu places a composition notebook into his hands. Journal no one written on the cover. Halloween. Nedzu grinned as he fixed his tie in the mirror. Papa. Izuku yelled out in greeting before entering through the open bathroom door. Nedzu looked over and hid his little laugh behind his paw. Izuku was dressed like him. Izuku was wearing a little suit that resembled his uncannily. His fluffy hair was pulled up under his little bear-like ears. He had little gloves on to represent his paws and a short tail sticking out of the bottom end of his trousers. Hello, little mouse. Are you ready to go? Nedzu asked. Yeah. Izuku replied excited. Nedzu ruffled his curly floor before turning back to the doorway. I was born ready for this. Tuya added, poking his head out to reveal his own look for the night. Tuya decided on being a male version of Sally with his skin covered in green and stitches all around. He wore patchwork clothes just like Sally with the repeated pattern of the cloth. I'm ready for the candy. Natsuo exclaimed. He wore a costume similar to the movie character Beetlejuice. His black and white striped suit was perfectly tailored. His eyes were surrounded by dark eyeshadow around his eyes and a grin to complete the look. His white hair was smothered in green dye from temporary green hair dye spray made for Halloween. What time are we heading out? Fuyumi questioned, fixing her skirt. She was dressed like a fairy or like an elf. She had ear accessories on to make her ears pointy at the ear. She wore a light pale blue kimono dress. Her hair cascading down in curls from her bun. Her neck was adorned with a faux crystal choker that hangs down the front of her dress. Her shoes were simple platform sandals that were actually really comfortable to wear. Shoto hummed, appearing out from his elder sister's legs. He was dressed like a little angel and devil cross. His white side had a little halo cocked to the side of his head. His right side had on silver and white colored clothes all the way down to his white sneakers. His left side had a dark maroon horn on his forehead. He had on dark red and black clothes all the way down to his black sneakers. All ready in my end. And I can only imagine everyone else is ready. Yes. The 5 voices of the children rang out to him. Shoto and Izuku giggled, Izuku rushing over to him to stand by him. Nedzu hummed, alright, everyone report to the living room so I can make sure everything is in order before we venture out. The children all headed to spend time in his apartment den while Nedzu got to work making sure the lights were off and other necessities. Making sure the security system will protect everything inside while he was away. With a nod, he shut his bedroom door with Ray's car keys in hand. He wanted her to relax for the night, so he promised to take her kids out trick-or-treating with him and Izuku. She ended up giving him her car keys since her car could actually handle the amount of children. All set. Let's head out, everyone. I have quite the evening landed. Nedzu said while he led them out the front door, locking it after Izuku came through last. What do you have planned? Fuyumi asked as she buckled her seatbelt in her mother's minivan that Nedzu was getting ready to drive. Nedzu had power loader make an adaptable booster seat to reach the pedals and steering wheel of every vehicle. Nedzu explained, I'm going to visit some heroes in the area not that far away. We will visit some companies or houses of many hero colleagues I have. Some you may already know. Eraser tiredly opened his door to the faces of the children. He rubbed his eyes and got out the assorted candies he got earlier that day since he knew Nedzu would probably do something like this. He never really gave out candy to trick-or-treaters, but he will give an exception to them. Before they left, Izuku gave him a hug which was gladly reciprocated. Tensei opened the door wide excitedly with Tenya dressed up beside him. Tenya hugged his friends Shoto and Izuku before going back to his brother's side. He was dressed just like his brother in their hero suit. Tensei handed over licorice whips into their bags with a huge smile. Midnight answered the door in a sweater dress very happily since she gets to see her little honorary nephews and niece. She gave them a whole bunch of random candies with little plastic toys as well. Present Mike was just finishing up his spooky hour at the radio station when they came. He just dressed casually when they came in the front door. Safe to say, he was excited to see them there. He hugged Shoto and Izuku to spin them around before handing them a bunch of crunchy candies. Snipe was in his usual cowboy getup when he greeted them at his door. Vlad King opened the doors of his company in a very vampiric cape. He gruffest before giving out the children multiple types chocolate candies. Ectoplasm opened up the door in his hero suit because he recently returned from his patrol about 20 minutes ago, but he hasn't changed out of suit just yet. He gave the children a few full-size bars to spoil them since he didn't get many trick-or-treaters in near his apartment. Cementos opened the door to his house smiling calmly at the group. He handed out many assorted treats like fruit-flavored candies. Recovery Girl answered the door with a yawn before smiling at the happy children who came to visit her. She had just arrived back from the children's hospital from visiting the sick to speed up their healing process before reading them a spooky story. Thankfully, she had plenty enough gummy bears left over from her visit for the children. After that, Nedzu took to some suburban areas to hit up some civilians' homes that were in safe neighborhoods. While visiting some doors, the people confused him for a children from his height and gave him candy as well. He received the candy slightly miffed since they couldn't tell he was an adult, but he wasn't that mad since he got free candy out of the deal. When the night was getting less young and the young children looked tired, Nedzu decided it was time to head back. Toya grabbed onto Natsuo as Fuyumi grabbed Shoto. Nedzu led back Izuku to the car by holding his hand the entire way. With all the children accounted for, Nedzu took back to his apartment to teach the kids about trading. So, we can just trade one candy for the other. Yes. USA, if you don't like a candy, but another person does, you can simply switch for a candy you like better. As long as both parties agree to it. But the bigger the candy, the bigger the trade. For example, a full-size candy bar is worth 3 fun-size bars. A fair trading deal, and you can decline the trade deal if you don't think it's fair or want to keep your candy to yourself. Okay, got it. Fuyumi, I trade you these candy corn bags if you give me your sour gummies. Natsuo offered, holding up 3 bags of his candy corn. Fuyumi nodded quickly, you got a deal. Fuyumi grabbed her mini bags of sour gummies and switched them for the bags of candy corn. Izuku suggested, holding up a saltwater taffy, Shoto, can I have your spider ring and then you can have my taffy? Shoto nodded, placing the spider ring on Izuku's finger before plopping the taffy into his mouth. He smiled when he tasted the sweet strawberry flavor that the taffy had. So the trading continued with Nedzu giving his own advice during some parts when the children didn't know what to trade for something. Tuya ended up trading away his chocolate taffy to Fuyumi for her cinnamon candies. Shoto traded his licorice to Natsuo for some more saltwater taffies. Izuku offered 2 of his regular lollipops for a gumball-centered lollipop. With the trading confusing, Nedzu set up the futons in the living room for the children's sleepover. While they continued trading, Nedzu started heading back to his room when Tuya looked over. What are you going to do? I'm going to go criticize fictional serial killers while I make myself have sugar high from all these candies I acquired. Nedzu replied, dragging a sack behind him to his bedroom door. Have a good night everybody. Oh, this plot is so stupid. Nedzu criticized as he dug his hands into the chocolates while he watched the end credits of the movie. There wasn't even any suspense. Anyone could spot that he was the killer from the beginning. Hey Papa? Izuku greeted, popping his curly hair from the side of Nedzu's bed. Nedzu looked over curiously. Oh, yes? What do you need, little mouse? Oh, do you want to trade your full-size Milky Way for my 3 mini Twix? Izuku asked, showing his fun-sized chocolate bars. Nedzu smiled. Throw in a licorice whip and I'll call it a deal. It's safe to say that Izuku was growing up. Nedzu can finally understand it now since he was able to carry Izuku in his arms long ago. But now, Izuku was almost towering over him in height. He is still young, but Nedzu knows he won't be for long. He had been teaching Izuku for many months now since he took him out of school to teach Izuku himself. Of course, the teachers enrolled here also help with Izuku's studies during the day. Nedzu looks back over his shoulder to see that Izuku's spot in his office was now more grown up. He still remembers the day he found him and the day he finally had to put his cribs into storage. Ah, is this that sentimental feeling parents get when their offspring is growing up too fast? He feels like he has been having this same feeling for quite a while now. He is growing to get used to the fact that Izuku was growing up. He already made a literal video album from cute security camera moments that he compiled together. He had the first steps, the actual first words, his own freakout over what he thought were his first words, and much more moments. Then he made an actual picture album with cute photos he took of Izuku over the years. He has up to 5 full albums at this point if his memory is accurate. He started on another now too long ago that has the first few pages filled with the kids in their Halloween costumes. He couldn't wait to fill multiple pages up when Izuku opens his Christmas presents. Speaking of, he should get started early. He heard Izuku's laughter from a few rooms down and smiled fondly. He remembered the times that Izuku personally charmed every single member of his staff. And it wasn't just his staff members. When some pro heroes came to talk about certain issues, Izuku would befriend them almost automatically. Goodness, those were some good memories. He actually has the moments in his many photo albums. Lunch Rush didn't really expect Nedzu to have a child when he signed up to be the head cook for the cafeteria. He heard many students talk about a little kid that walked with Nedzu around the school with little worksheets in his hand. He couldn't believe it himself when Nedzu walked in with his son behind him after all the students had cleared out. Sir, you didn't tell me you had a son. Lunch Rush stated when he saw the two approach. Nedzu tilted his head. Oh? I apologize. It must have slipped my mind. Lunch Rush, meet Izuku. Little Mouse, meet Lunch Rush. He is the one in charge of the food served at the cafeteria. Izuku gasped, is he the one who makes the yummy katsudon? Yes, he does, Nedzu replied to his son before turning to Lunch Rush. I gave him your katsudon a while ago, and he loved it very much. I can go ahead and make some more for the little guy if he wants. Lunch Rush offered, tightening his apron. Izuku smiled, you would? Thank you. Katsudon is my favorite food. What's your favorite food? Lunch Rush smiled as he started to cook the little kid some food as he continued to ramble questions of the pro hero. He did his best to answer all of them, but it was hard since the boy had a tendency to ramble through most of his questions. But once Izuku had tasted his food, Lunch Rush was proud at the grateful smile that Izuku had on his face. The next day, the students watched as their principal sat with his young son in the middle of the cafeteria. They hide their smiles at the cute scene of father and son just eating together with the young boy swinging his legs. Sometimes, Izuku and Nedzu were quoting movies to each other to know if they would get the reference. Of course, Izuku was still young and didn't know the kind of movies that Nedzu watched, so the quotes were more or less picked from the kid-friendly films. But at times when Nedzu wasn't around to play the reference game, Izuku would hum a song he had memorized from one of his favorite movies. In the teacher's lounge, Izuku was humming the song he knew from that one scene with Cinderella cleaning the floors. He was all alone, or so he thought, until he heard a soft voice from one of the cubicles. Oh, sing Sweet Nightingale. Sighing, Izuku pauses his humming to look back at the cubicles. He could almost see a peak of a brown trench coat from the top of one of them. Curious, he jumped down from the office chair he was in to go investigate who it was. Izuku walked over to see Ectoplasm grading the homework from his class. They both looked at each other before Izuku climbed into one of the seats next to him to continuing humming the song. When Nedzu came in a little later, he found the two discussing the third movie of Cinderella and how it was much better than the second one. Snipe gained a soft spot for Izuku quite quickly when Nedzu caught them in the middle of a fake cowboy showdown. When Nedzu opened the door, Izuku had already landed an imaginary shot which made Snipe fall dramatically to the ground. Izuku laughed hysterically, rushing over to plant himself on top of Snipe to keep him there. He also recalls another moment where Snipe was carrying a laughing Izuku around on his shoulders while he headed to the teacher's lounge. Izuku was laughing as he kept saying how he felt like he was flying. Vlad King's students didn't really know he had a soft spot. He was a very strict teacher who wanted to see the best in his students. He was fairly new, but he still wanted his students to succeed. His students got the shock of their lives when in the middle of their class a small child walked in and sat down in one of the empty seats nearest Vlad King's desk. They thought the child would be escorted out of class or something to that extent. They didn't expect their teacher to hand a little notebook and pencil to the child before continuing on with his lesson. Nedzu laughs at the memory of shocked students still talking about the cute little boy in their hero class. Once, Nedzu instructed Cementos to help make some new building plans with power loader. Izuku added his own doodles to contribute to the plan, which made them both smile at his eagerness to help. They made sure to basically make a show of building for Izuku, who looked so astonished to see something on paper become real life. Recovery Girl enlisted him for his help to become her little assistant for the day. He followed her the whole day after his early lessons to hand out gummies to the students. The students gladly took the candy from the small child in the oversized lab coat before he ran back to Recovery Girl's side each time she walked further ahead. One day, Nedzu had to call in Gang Orca to discuss a situation that needed his experience and his vast number of sidekicks to help. He allowed Izuku to sit in for the meeting to tutor him about planning for these types of situations. Gang Orca was a bit hesitant in having a child there since he knew that his appearance earned him a spot on the list of heroes that would be dangerous villains. But his small fear was proven wrong when the small child didn't face him with fear but only with curiosity. Nedzu watched as his son had fun asking the pro hero a lot of questions after their discussion. It was clear the other pro had a soft spot for Izuku, just like the rest of the people who he meets. He could see the pro hero hesitancy at the beginning of the meeting loosen up when he saw that Izuku was just a curious mind with a kind heart. Izuku even charmed Best Jeanist later that day when Nedzu discussed a meeting with his agency. Best Jeanist ruffled his curls when he had to leave, which made Izuku smile so big. Then the final meeting he had was talking to the wild pussycats about new security. But by the end of the meeting, Izuku was made into an honorary kitten. Nedzu smiles as he touched his paw over the photo album. The photo on the cover was Izuku's bright face right after he watched one of All Might's fighting scenes. Nedzu thought he was going to get replaced with All Might as his son's new favorite hero, but Izuku disagreed. He might be a good hero, but you are my favorite hero. Izuku smiled up at his father. Why is that? Nedzu asked softly. Izuku giggles with a happy grin, you're my papa. Christmas time. Nedzu didn't know a lot about human holidays or traditions when he first started living normally. He always wondered why there were certain holidays. It took more learning about human holidays from several reliable sources when he figured out the main root of celebration was most of the time because of a sense of family and love. He didn't know that he would have been celebrating these holidays until he got the best gift of the world a few years ago. His son, Izuku. Izuku brought more light into his world than he first realized. And for these past years, they would decorate for holidays together, especially Christmas. He would allow Izuku to hang the little star on their small tree each year when they were done hanging up the ornaments. The ornaments ranged from little arts and craft ones that Izuku made or special ones that Nedzu would buy himself. His favorite was a photograph and a snow globe that he always set in the middle of the tree. The snow globe itself was durable biodegradable material that wouldn't break if it ever fell from the tree. And for these past years, Nedzu was also joined in the festivities by Izuku's growing family. It was Christmas Day. Nedzu had invited everyone from young Shoto to Aizawa to join in the fun. He knew that Rei and her 4 children would most definitely arrive first since they were only a floor down from his apartment. Hizashi and Aizawa would arrive at around the same time since they live close to the other. Kayama would most likely follow after them a few minutes later because of her patrol time. And lastly, Tensei would arrive with the young Tenya. The doorbell rings right on cue. Ah! That must be Rei and the young ones. Izuku? would you get the door? I'm busy putting this pie in the oven. Nedzu asked his son while he balanced on a step stool to place the blueberry pie into his oven. I got it, Papa. Izuku replied, running up to the door and opening it wide to welcome in their guests. Hi Auntie Rei. Hello, Tuya. Salutations, Natsuo. Greetings, Fuyumi. Hey, Shoto. Yo, Natsuo replied, ruffling Izuku's hair as everyone walked past with their own greetings to get inside. Once everyone was inside, they all received a hug from the happy Izuku. Rei and Fuyumi placed their small mountain of gifts under the tree. Tuya teased lightly with a smile, oof, you are getting big, squirt. Nope, you are just getting taller. Izuku responded. Nedzu clapped his paws together as he walked up to the group as they set their gifts beside the tree. Now, welcome everyone. I have a pie in the oven that should be ready as soon as the last guest arrives. Until then, there is a multitude of drinks and food inside the kitchen. Take a plate and place what you can eat on your plate. Enjoy. And just like Nedzu predicted, the rest of the guests arrived in the order he said they would. And each one was welcomed by a hugging Izuku. Nedzu pulled out the pie right on time as Izuku tackled a laughing Tenya into a tight hug. Tensei laughed as he picked up the two into an ever bigger embrace while Nedzu rested the pie on the coffee table in the living room to cool off. It will be cool enough to eat after dinner. Nedzu states, making Natsuo slowly sit back down from his own excitement to devour a piece of that pie. Everyone was sitting in the living room, eating their meal. Natsuo was very happy because he was so close to eating the pie. Tuya was sitting next to Shoto, joking around with Fuyumi about how Shoto's hair was like a peppermint. In retaliation, Shoto weakly slapped his brother while the latter laughed at his own joke. Fuyumi was smiling at her two brothers playing with each other as her mother braided her hair. Namiri listened as Izuku was telling her about a promising rising hero he saw in an article. Hizashi was sporting his eggnog mustache as he rambled to Aizawa about the radio station. Nedzu waited until everyone was full of food before cutting into the blueberry pie for dessert. Natsuo was very satisfied as soon as he took the first bite. With their pie, they all had watched a Christmas special on television. After they finished their dessert and the television special, Nedzu brought everyone over to the tree to open their presents. Rei had been given a lot of homemade gifts from her children, including a sign they had painted themselves of their whole family and stick figures. Namiri had gifted her with an essential oil diffuser. Aizawa had given her a soft blue quilt that had many patterns of snowflakes and lace. Hizashi had given her some CDs about relaxation and meditation. Tensei and Tenya had gifted her with multiple candles with all different kinds of scents. Nedzu and Izuku had given her a book of mythology and a book filled with creative poems. Tuya had been given LED strip lights that change color from his mother. He had been given some cozy shorts and sweatpants from Aizawa. His siblings had given him a dark blue skateboard. Namiri had given him a set of cologne that smelled like a fireplace and slightly of marshmallows. Hizashi gifted him with a black leather wrap bracelet and a pair of black headphones. Tensei and Tenya has given him a pair of nice running shoes. Nedzu and Izuku gave him a nice leather jacket that had hanging silver chains. Fuyumi received a bubble tea kit from her mother. A little jewelry box that had beautiful flowers illustrated on the sides of the wood from Hizashi. A soft white blanket from Aizawa. Namiri had given her a box of rainbow sherbet-scented bath bombs. Tensei and Tenya had given her a beautiful gemstone necklace. Nedzu and Izuku had gifted her with a scarf that had a map pattern and a beautiful silver bracelet. Her brothers had ended her night with their own gift of a white lace dress that she had her eyes on for a while. Natsuo has been given a happy robot dog from Tensei and Tenya. He was given 2 huge Lego sets from Namiri. His mother gave him a ukulele and his siblings got him a book of sheet music that he could play on his new instrument. Hizashi gave him a magic kit with a sleek black top hat. Aizawa gave him a shark blanket that covered his legs, so it looked like he was being eaten by a cartoon shark. Nedzu and Izuku gave him a few games for his handheld game system. Shoto was given a koala onesie from his mother. His siblings gave him a cape that was like All Might's. Tensei and Tenya gave him a corkboard for him to hang in his bedroom and a soft memory foam pillow. Aizawa gave him a fluffy red blanket that was very big. It was big enough to wrap him into a burrito. Hizashi gave him a radio that he got signed by All Might. Nemuri gifted him a Squirtle plush with a matching hoodie. Nedzu and Izuku gifted him with a book guide about the elements of the earth like snow or ice being part of water. Tensei had been given an astronomy book by his brother who looked really proud that he bought it himself with his allowance. He was given a huge detailed puzzle from the Fukuyama family that was 100 pieces. Hizashi gave him a dartboard and a board game. Nemuri gave him a telescope. Aizawa gave him a figure of a vintage knight since his hero suit was based on a knight's armor. Nedzu and Izuku gave him a geode lamp that could also portray the constellations on his ceiling. Tenya was given a fast scooter from his older brother who smiled at his brother's excited expression. He was given a remote-controlled drone from Nemuri. Hizashi gave him board games and a deck of playing cards. Aizawa gave him a workout hoodie made of soft material that was breathable. The Fukuyama family gave him a few books of fictional fantasy with mythical creatures. Nedzu and Izuku gave him CDs from a few musicals and one was from an opera that he might enjoy. Nemuri had been given her favorite perfume from Tensei and Tenya. The Fukuyama family gave her a skin care kit that had so many items. Aizawa gave her a beautiful amethyst necklace. Hizashi gave her a simple gold necklace with a pearl pendant. Nedzu and Izuku gifted her with a book on fashion from one of her favorite designers. Hizashi had been given a large yellow sweater with a parakeet on the front from Aizawa. Tensei and Tenya gave him a personalized pair of headphone headset from his radio station job. Nemuri gave him a relaxing lava lamp for his office. The Fukuyama family gifted him with a big book about the evolution of music over time and another on the greatest musicians of all time. Nedzu and Izuku gave him a working vintage record player with a few records for him to enjoy. Aizawa had been given a handmade knitted gray beanie with matching gloves, a scarf from the Fukuyama family. He received a yellow blanket with sleeves from Hizashi. Nemuri gifted him a white noise machine that might help him sleep better. Tensei and Tenya gave him a picture frame of all four of them from back in their high school days. Nedzu and Izuku gave him a massager that could help with his shoulders after a long day of teaching. Izuku had been given an instant camera and big photograph album from the Fukuyama family. Aizawa had gifted him with a big beanbag plushie that was shaped like a teddy bear. Nemuri had given the young Izuku a collection of figures from his favorite book series. Hizashi gave him a speaker and sound system to play his favorite music. Tensei and Tenya had given him a Bulbasaur plush backpack. Nedzu, his father, gave him a large set of books that covered myths and legends, the world before quirks, and hero society in general. Nedzu has been given a handmade tie from Rei and a sophisticated fountain pen from her children. Tensei and Tenya gave him a classic white mug with almost 20 different types of teas. Aizawa had gifted him a small soft chair that was almost like a beanbag chair but even more comfortable. Hizashi had given him a vintage quill with ink and a wax seal for him to write very fancy letters. Nemuri gave him a gift certificate for his favorite tailor for a new suit if he wished. Izuku, his son, had made him a painting of their family. One frame was just him and Izuku, but the other contained everyone together from last Christmas. Nedzu wouldn't have believed if 10 years ago someone would have said that Nedzu had gotten himself a family of humans he trusted. He most likely would have lauded in his face before getting back to his principal duties. But now with everyone laughing together and smiling, he still couldn't believe it himself. He somehow gained a family, and it all started with a baby in a basket. Izuku smiled, waving over his father. "Hey, Papa. Come in a little closer, Tensei is setting up for a photo." "Oh, one moment," Nedzu replied softly, scooting closer to his son on his low couch. He watched as everyone gathered around or on the couch as Tensei set up the camera to flash in 10 seconds. "Okay, it's set," Tensei said loudly, walking fast to squeeze in between his younger brother and Miss Rei. "Quick, everyone say cheese." Nedzu still didn't understand things about humans and their traditions. "Cheese." Everyone yelled as they smiled wide for the camera, but he still had his whole life to learn more. Yay! Did we get it? I didn't blink, did I? Izuku asked before widening his eyes as he remembered something. "Oh wait, speaking of cameras, I heard there was this journalist guy that can take photos from any part of his body. Do you think that dash?" And he still had his whole life to spend time with his son. And that is the end of this video. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.